at the quad, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous here. It's so fancy. Much fancier than I was wanting. No, I'm just kidding. It's exactly the amount of fanciness I wanted.
Another round of applause for Ohan. Congratulations. Hi, I'm Sasha, and I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight at Mix NYC. It's back. Yay. Yeah, beautiful program this year. Congrats to everyone who's organized this. I think I religiously went to Mix NYC for like a decade in New York, and screened one of my first films at Mix NYC. So it's just really wonderful to be back. Yeah. And so wonderful to be with Ohan. And I think, is this the first time you're screening this film in a cinema publicly, this version?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to just introduce you. 'Cause I think it's nice for people to hear a little bit about just a little short bio. So Ohan Breiding, did I say your last name correctly?
It's Breiding.
Breiding,
Yeah.
thank you. I realized that I've never said it out loud.
It's like I'm not a breeder, but I means porridge in Swiss German, so it's like porridge thing, Breiding. Or like horseback riding.
Ohan Breiding is a Brooklyn-based Swiss-American artist working across photography, video, installation, and in between, and engaging with ecological care and the violences of the Anthropocene, which is, I think, very evident in this work, those themes. Their work has been exhibited widely and internationally. I'm not going to name all the many incredible places that Ohan has shown, but I will mention that you have a solo exhibition, Promiscuous Ghost, that is currently on view at Ochi Gallery. Did I say that right? Okay. In Los Angeles through December 21st. So if you're on the West Coast, go check it out. And Ohan is going to have in February 2025 this work, and an expanded version of Belly of a Glacier will be at Mass Mocha. Congratulations. So something to look forward to. So I just want to first congratulate you on such a beautiful, gorgeous, layered film that is, I think, deeply personal too, I understand. And I think in many ways is a lot about transition, about shifting from one form to another, about thresholds, transitions from birth to the earth, to death, to being remade, from ice to water. And I wanted to ask you, I know this is a project that there's been many iterations, right? Mm-hmm. And you've worked a lot in still photography. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to start by asking you about, what is your relationship to this place? What do you want to tell us about your relationship to this place? And why cinema? Or why did you choose to use the mode of cinema to explore this set of ideas in this place?
Thank you. I feel so lucky being here with you. And thank you all for being here. I grew up close to this glacier. And so the very first shot that you see is me on the sled on the left-hand side, and my father is pushing me on the sled. And that was taken in the 80s on that glacier. And that glacier looked very, very different then. And I've been revisiting the glacier and just seeing how it's been transitioning and melting throughout the last, 30, 35 years. So for me, this place is about play and thinking about my relationship to my brothers and my father. Also about revisiting my family photo archive, photographs that my mother took, and rephotographing or refilming photographs from someone else. And I have a very fraught relationship to photography. It's a medium I'm trained in. It's the thing I teach. But I oftentimes find that it lacks affect, or having a notion of tying in senses, like sound is really important to me, or movement, or like you're saying, transition, like thinking of showing something that's able to go from one place into the next, sometimes in the same shot, feels very important to me. Yep, I will say everything that I filmed, all the still shots in here, I filmed, and then all the moving shots, the cinematographer, Sarah Kinney, filmed. So the way I film is very much like a photographer. And so I feel like this is a film that uses both the photographic archive and then also the process of thinking about how something is composed through like the freezing of a frame. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, sound. I was thinking about sound a lot watching this piece, and and movement. Like, you literally take us from the kind of the source, or the elevated top of the glacier, and we travel down kind of a rushing river, first a drip, a dribble, and then a rushing river, and then out, I think, to the Mediterranean Sea, the last image that we see after the funeral. I love that it doesn't end in just death. There's something, maybe a rebirth or a continuation. And the sound is really driving, I think, a lot. The film really vacillates between these kind of very turbulent and almost violent, intense kind of moments to these really slow, serene, and quite sublime, beautiful moments. And there's that the pacing of the edit, and then the sound really, I think, underscores or drives that. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that process, particularly the sound. And the narrator says at one point, I stand and I try to listen to the sound of the earth turning, right? So will you tell me and everybody here a little bit about your process with the sound?
I mean, this film is very much a collaboration with Richie Carey, who's a sound designer and who also did the music for it. And I'd like to thank you, Alexis Camacho, who's also going to be showing her film here on Saturday, for introducing me to Richie. It was absolutely incredible working with him. I feel like he's able to translate sound into something that becomes form and very much mirrors, in a way, the visuals. From the cow birth in the very beginning, the sound you're hearing is actually ice calving, and so we're already like introducing this like calving of ice, or the death of a glacier, when you're watching the birth of a cow happen. Or the three parts of the petrographic lens where you see these different ice slithers. The first one is very much like regional to Switzerland, where you hear yodeling, or this instrument of a coin that's in a milk bowl in a circular notion, the church next to where I grew up. And then the second slide is all sounds collected from the global south, and thinking about who's most affected by climate change. And then the third slide is an accumulation of different sounds, from protest to drilling to airplane sounds, anything that's like polluting the air. And I feel like he did such an incredible job kind of giving us these sounds as like warning signs, and then maybe with those, juxtaposing these images that I find quite beautiful, or very gentle. And the first narrator you hear is my best friend's daughter, Yuna, who also grew up close to this region, and so the sound of her voice as this, introductory moment of revealing a memory that's my childhood memory of seeing a snowflake for the first time, thinking it's so beautiful. And because it's so beautiful, of course, I want to go gift it to my mother. By the time I reach her, my body heat has melted it, to then my voice coming in. So I'm like then the older version of Yuna, basically. And when we're in the ice archive, the shot with all the metal tubes, those are also recordings of a lot of people in my community. So you hear different generations, mostly like women generations. So it's from Yuna to her mother Miri to her mother Johanna's voices all talking throughout these tubes. So thinking about the lineage, like matriarchal lineage of my childhood. And yeah, I think maybe that's enough. Yeah.
You get to say everything you want to say. I had trouble narrowing down just a few questions because I had so many things I wanted to talk to you about. But I also loved the first narration in the child's voice is in the present tense too. It's a memory, but it's it's now. And I thought that was set us up really well for the rest of the journey of the film. So you talked a little bit about your collaboration on sound. We do a lot of collaborating in film. And one of the major collaborations is our working with participants on screen. And you in particular worked with a lot of more than human participants in this film. The glacier, the ice, the cow, speaking of the cow giving birth. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you approached working with more than human participants, and specifically what it was like working with cattle
Sure.
in the film.
I love cows so much. I'd much rather work with cows than humans. Maybe I'll start by saying the way I thought about the red footage in the film is starting with the glacier and thinking almost as if the landscape is a human body standing upright. So the glacier becomes the head, and the glacier is then transforming into the Glacier Lake, which then becomes the Rhone River, and then travels down through the Swiss Alps, Western France, into the Mediterranean Sea. So almost thinking of like the body having a fever and how one could translate a glacier having a fever in relation to us as humans or animals. And then depicting a lot of hoofed animals, like the mountain goats or sheep or cows was really important to me, because the same way that they are relying on the glacier's water, as are we, as filmmakers, we rely on the gelatin to create analog film through these hoofed animals. So it's also like an homage to thinking about interdependency between species, and water being the base of all of those. And yeah, I think it was like 4 years ago I knew the film had to start with a cow birth. It was like before I even knew what the film was, I just had this like vision of it needing to begin with a cow birth, which is quite hard to do in terms of knowing when the cow is going to be born, being there. I was with a cinematographer. She was Sarah crying, and it's had so much joy. I was like almost throwing up and like disgusted. Like it's just like our reactions were completely different. I kept asking if it's okay that we're watching, and she's like, I had all these questions around ethics that the farmers really didn't were making fun of me. And yeah, I think through language, thinking about how glaciologists describe a glacier when they talk about the glacier calving to a glacier having a tongue or a snout or a slit or a belly, felt really important for me to translate that into a collaboration with animals, and with the ice as a means to think about the ice or the animals that have something to say, and we should be paying closer attention to what that is. Maybe the same way that the ice is one of our oldest archives. I see film as this film as a future archive that will allow us to gain access to a space that will no longer be here by 2050.
I want to ask you so many more questions, but we're limited on time, and so I want to give an opportunity to all the folks here, perhaps, to inquire. Any questions for our friend Ohan? Yes, right here.
Is the funeral something that was going on?
Just so everybody can hear.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and showing the film. Was the funeral staged for the film, or was it like a protest, something that was going on that you then went and documented?
The first glacier funeral took place in 2019 in Iceland. And since then, there's been 4 other funerals in Mexico and Austria and Switzerland. And so this is archival footage of a funeral that took place a year before I was filming. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for this film. It was incredibly moving. I was wondering if going through the process you were thinking about sort of how to tell the gravity of the story and if you could comment a little bit on the thinking behind how the story sort of evolves from a place of looking at the archives and then going towards really looking at the transformation, but really the death of this glacier. And how did you think about the pacing of the film, and how are you navigating that?
I feel like there's a lot of dick swinging when it comes to geology. And so I think some of the early shots were about taking you from the deepest hole in the earth and sucking you out. And so that felt very much about speed at times, or the drilling. And for me, it was really important to think about my relationship to science, or collaborating now with these scientists, where so much of geology or glaciology is in relation to extraction, that and also maybe thinking of the sublime, and how landscapes like of, let's say, the Swiss Alps, for example, where I'm from, are depicted where it's always from a distance. I'm thinking of romanticist painters like Caspar David Friedrich. It's a soul man looking over this like intensely beautiful landscape. I try to really slow a lot of those moments down and think about my relationship as someone who's like almost like becoming the glacier or the animal, and filming a lot of things from up close, and thinking about like haptics, I guess, or abstraction. So even the way that the cow birth is filmed, I would hope that maybe at first you're not quite sure what you're looking at, but through the sound, which is a slow dripping, it reminds you of your own body, maybe needing to pee, or thinking about ice already before you've seen ice. So I think the same way that ice is transtemporal, and it allows us to look into the past in order to predict the future when it comes to climate change. I think I was thinking about the filming process as like tying in these like very close-up shots to shots that are also from a distance, or the speed of extraction to something that feels quite gentle, like the covering of a glacier, or the carrying of these coffins, or the ice sculpture that is resembling a coffin. I don't know if that answers your question.
What would you say is the impact that you've seen in your life, witnessing, obviously, you mentioned you lived in the Swiss Alps region, and seeing like the degrade of the glacier, and how this film has not only impacted others, but like, what would you say what has it impacted on your life personally?
I think the more I'm making work about climate emergency, I'm also very aware that we're living in a state of complete crisis in so many other levels. So for me, even though this work is about the environment, it's maybe kind of how you said it, like doesn't end with the funeral, ends with this view of the Mediterranean Sea. I like to think about the sense of flooding, or thinking of a place of like returning to, and thinking that this glacier on a molecular level is already the Mediterranean, or becoming a space that is surrounded by places that are not in Europe. And yeah, I think there's something about like climate emergency and the emergency of the total climate crisis we're living in now on so many levels, that I'm really trying to connect in a way that is hopefully like evoking some form of like emotion, or sorrow, but also perhaps rage, or thinking about like notions of violence and action. Yeah.
For one more?
Yeah, I was just thinking about in Breiding Sweetgrass. Robin Wall Kimmerer is talking about how like water doesn't have a choice. It like flows. It like it melts. It goes into the river. It goes in. I'm thinking about the plaque at the end, or toward the end, where it's like seems like a call to action of like, will you, people of the future, people of the present, like, will you change it? And so I'm wondering about like the broader audience. I feel very lucky to have seen it, but like who are you desiring this to like impact, and like where do you see this going, and having that kind of impact, because that's so important.
This is my first film festival, so I'm excited to show it here, and I would like to show it at different festivals and in other countries as well, hopefully. Definitely like an art context. But I also would really love to, go to schools or universities. I'm always interested in collaborating across different departments. So, I'm thinking of like environmental studies departments that would maybe invite me to come and show it in a space like that. But I also will say I don't think this film is like, you're gonna watch it and then there's awareness and things are gonna change. That's not what I'm thinking with this. But I guess it is important for me to think about it also outside of like an art or a film festival context.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ohan. Congratulations. Thank you, Mix. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you all very